Good morning, y'all. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. Lots to talk about with winter making a comeback here across the east. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and show you what I'm talking about. So this is what is going to set up to be an intense shot of cold for this time of the year coming next week behind a storm that is expected to form and grow off the East Coast and turn into what would be a major nor'easter over coastal New England by Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. That's going to bring back a lot of wind, a lot of heavy snow to the interior Northeast, and maybe some places that are in a big snow drought will finally pick up some accumulating snow. So we're going to get to talk about that. How cold we'll get in the Southeast and deep South, I'll talk about that as well. And what's going on behind this, I'm going to talk about that as well for you guys as well. Did I say as well? Okay. Sorry. Just had some coffee and now I'm repeating myself. Apologize for that. Anyway, here is the upper level water vapor imagery. You can see an intense storm spinning off the northwest coast. That is going to draw moisture northeastward right into California, where I think we can safely say the longer term drought's pretty much coming to an end in this weather pattern, as we are getting bombarded today into tonight in California with too much of a good thing. That's rain and heavy mountain snow. And another trough down across the eastern Pacific is drawing some moisture up into the southern United States. That has broken down our high pressure ridge, which is right here in this region, right over the Gulf and the Southwest Atlantic, and taking those clouds and that moisture and expanding them eastward into the deep South, where we're going to have to look at a bit of severe weather here over the next few days. In the Northeast, it's chilly, and we've got a low pressure over the Great Lakes, which is going to move east in your direction today. We're going to see some snow moving into the Northeast, but not everybody's going to see that snowfall. And I'm going to talk about who gets it and where. And then you can see colder air stretching southward into Atlantic Canada. This is just the beginning of what's going to be a colder weather pattern over the next couple of weeks over much of the east and the northern parts of the United States. Let's look at our temperature probability map. A pretty high likelihood that much of the country is going to be below average here for the second half of next week into next weekend, with the exception of the south central United States. We'll have high pressure building back in there. And also Florida is not really going to participate in the cold. And then beyond that, we see some warming across Florida, but continued cold air over the north central and eastern parts of the United States. So very much a different look than what we saw for at least 2/3 of the winter, where much of the eastern 2/3 of the country was above average. The West is still on the cool side, but we are going to see some more variability in that. Now, precipitation, unfortunately, looks to stay wet in places that just don't really need that. California, the Southwest, and parts of the deep South. We do need some rain down across South Texas and South Florida. We'll see some chances increasing there, and then equal probabilities in the eastern U.S. of above average versus below average precipitation. In the longer term, it does look like it'll get more unsettled up the East Coast, and with the cold air in place, that could mean some magic might happen here at the buzzer as we get into the weekend of the 18th and 19th and beyond. But again, this is just a forecast 2 weeks out, and things could still vary quite a bit. Currently, we do have a very colorful map in the western and northern parts of the country. Flash flood watches and some warnings over central and northern Cal. And we have winter storm warnings over the mountains of the west, another big storm getting ready to move right on in. Up north, we have winter weather advisories pretty much stretching from Washington to Connecticut, but in between, winter storm warnings are in effect over the Rocky Mountains, over the upper Mississippi Valley, the coastline of Wisconsin, the coastline of Lake Erie, and NEPA here, Northeast PA. And we will have another intense storm moving in tonight and tomorrow, bringing blizzard conditions possibly to North Dakota and the far eastern tip of Montana as well. And this will be a significant storm here over the northern parts of the country, as well as in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where we do have high risks for winter storm impacts causing very difficult travel. Travel will remain impossible here across the Sierra Nevada, as well as parts of the northern Rockies, and we'll have impacts stretching all the way into New York City here tonight, and some low to moderate impacts across the Great Lakes and interior Northeast. But this will be not a major snowfall coming over the next couple of days. Next week, we have a bigger storm to look at. The Storm Prediction Center shows a marginal risk of severe weather this afternoon and tonight over North Florida, South Georgia, and then a slight risk on day 2. And let me bring this up so that you guys can now see some more detail. Just a marginal risk of some hail and strong winds. Not really going to be a big outbreak today. Now, tomorrow we do see some conditionally severe weather over Oklahoma and Arkansas, and a lot of this will depend on how things organize. So right now, a slight risk is shown with the chance for possibly tornadoes over southeastern Oklahoma. Let me zoom in and show you all kind of a better look at things here. You can see pretty much south and east Oklahoma City does have a chance for some tornadoes later tomorrow night. A bigger area, though, highlighted for the risk for hail, which does get all the way back to Oklahoma City and even Tulsa and spreads eastward into Little Rock, Pine Bluff, Hot Springs, even Texarkana. And there could be locally strong winds here as well. And as we get into day 3, whoops, I don't know why that didn't update. All right, so pivotal weather let me down. All right, Storm Prediction Center, here we roll. Day 3, severe weather potential here is going to be in effect across the deep south from just northeast of Baton Rouge through Jackson, Mississippi, eastward, all the way to about Macon and Bainbridge, Georgia. So a slight risk that we do see maybe a few tornadoes, but more likely hail and strong wind over the southeast. And this will be the beginning of what will turn into our nor'easter up the coast here Monday into Tuesday. The HRRR model shows you all the shorter term forecast. Snow over the Great Lakes will expand eastward into northern and central PA this morning, and especially this afternoon over central New York and northeastern Pennsylvania. It looks like it'll be rain primarily across southeastern PA, the mid-Atlantic region. We'll continue to have some rain over the Carolinas this morning, moving out to sea here around mid-afternoon, moving away from the Outer Banks. And then down south, a few stronger storms possible this afternoon over southern Georgia, and then moving into northern Florida right around dark tonight. You'll see the big blob in the west. That's our next storm. Just a complete fire hose, an atmospheric river from the Bay Area on south all the way down to about Malibu and even a little farther south than that. And just bombarded with heavy rain here over central and southern Cal, heavy mountain snow. And that expands into Utah and western Colorado as the day wears on into the night tonight. Let me zoom in, and first I'll show you the east. And we'll do the mid-Atlantic because it's easier to see things here. And you can see primarily the snow line remains north of I-80 right on through this evening. But as we go on farther east this afternoon, there's some warming that allows any snow to go over to rain around Allentown and the Lehigh Valley, as well as North Jersey and the tri-state area here. So very unlikely we really see any snow out of this. Let me go back a little bit on the model so we can see a little bit longer range. Now, as this low moves offshore and some colder air infiltrates behind it, overnight tonight, we will see perhaps a little bit of wet snow here, just a bit of a thumping here over North Jersey, northeastern PA, and getting close down to the Tappan Zee Bridge, where we're seeing some snow here tonight around 4 or 5 in the morning. But it looks like the rain kind of fights things off here when we get into the 5 boroughs and into central Jersey. Kind of a wintry mix tomorrow morning, but unlikely we see a whole lot of accumulation at this point as the ground's a little too warm. You can see it's like a tug of war here in the morning tomorrow, where it's still raining, but trying to mix in some wet snow. But really, you got to get up into the higher elevations to see much. Same goes for the Connecticut River Valley. You see this little area in here notched in where it's liquid and not frozen. The blues are the snow, so it tries to snow in Hartford, but it looks like rain kind of takes over. Same goes for Long Island, and this is really the same song and dance as what we've seen all winter, where you get to within about 50 miles of the coastline and we just can't win when it comes to snow. Now that could change with our following storm here next week, and I will talk a little bit more about that. But for the most part, if you're going to say a storm is going to happen, it's pretty much northern and central PA, central New York, and the interior of New England, southern New England. By northern New England, we're probably not going to see much of any accumulation. Looking at snow totals here, now let me go find that for you guys. Thought I had that. Oh, gosh. Well, we could do precip total by type. That might help. Nope, just kidding. Winter. All right, total snow. Use Kashera here. So you guys can see, we'll see a few inches on the ground by the end of the day and perhaps 5 to 6 inches, and even some enhancement here off of Lake Erie by tonight with potentially up to a foot. The West Virginia mountains and Western Maryland mountains will also see some. And we get over here to just west of York, maybe around Shippensburg and Chambersburg, we could see a quick inch of snow falling tonight. But as we get into tomorrow, you can see very limited amounts right up the Connecticut River on Long Island. For the most part, probably not going to see much of anything. New York City, maybe a few tenths, but Philly and Trenton on southward, we're going to get gypped once again here. Sorry to say that, folks. Farther up to the north and east, let's look at New England here. It's right below mid-Atlantic. What's my problem today? Sorry. And we do see that amounts tomorrow are pretty minimal here across the Boston area. Maybe we get a coating on the ground. Even Vermont, not going to see much except in the southern Green Mountains into the Berkshires here. But as you go over into Canada, into Ontario, which is suffering through the cloudiest winter ever, it seems. We are going to see several inches when you get to about St. Catharines and curling around to Niagara Falls, going to see several inches. Or if you're in Canada, that's going to be 20 to 24 centimeters. So that will, again, pile up on top of all the snow that we've already seen. Now, as we go farther off into the future, once we get past the weekend on the NAM, you see the next storm ramping up quickly here. We'll see a lot of wind-driven snow and blizzard conditions developing later tonight and continuing through tomorrow in the northern Dakotas. That spreads into the Twin Cities, and rain changes to snow in Des Moines. And then this rain-snow line in the Great Lakes does drop farther south tomorrow night, where Chicago's looking at all snow. Indianapolis could see some mixing at the start, but then probably a few hours of snow early in the day on Sunday. And then even down about Cincinnati and Dayton, we could see a small amount of snow accumulating before things start breaking up. If you've got to travel to Dayton, maybe to go see some basketball, we're going to announce the brackets. You may run into a bit of snow here Sunday morning. Not a big deal, but certainly something we're going to have to watch. Also, the potential for some severe weather later in the afternoon on Sunday down in here. And my model does not quite go out that far, so we'll show you the icon. No, we're not. Just kidding. Oh my goodness, I'm just having a morning here. All right, precip type. And you can see there's kind of not a lot of precipitation showing up on Sunday, but what does happen down in here could be unstable enough for localized severe weather. And I think that's primarily Sunday afternoon and then spreading south and eastwards Sunday evening into southern Georgia and maybe far northern Florida. All right, so temperatures aloft, you guys can see it is going to be turning cooler here behind storm number 1 here this afternoon and tonight. And then we do rebound a little bit here for Sunday. Here comes the next wave of cold spreading down south and east, and a very cold air mass aloft here for this time of the year, Tuesday into Wednesday. Not the brutalist or the most cold that we've ever seen. Certainly nothing compared to last December around Christmas time. But after we've gone through such a mild period, this is going to kind of shock some folks here by Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to have some mountain snow, some cold, and certainly something that's going to damage plants that you may have already planted in the southeast. That moves out, and later next week, we do warm up again for a couple of days. You can see the next wave of cold, though, is set to move in next weekend from west to east. And I don't know what it is with the weekends, but for whatever reason, those are the days we see the most action and the cloudiest and coldest weather, it seems, in the east. So that pattern repeats itself. Here's the European big storm in the west, a smaller storm in the east that moves away here. And the big storm in the west does expand onto the plains here on Saturday and dives south and east, kind of a two-parter. Here's our chance for some severe weather Sunday afternoon. Here's our winter part of our storm. This is what's going to take over, but you can see there's a lot of cold. These isobars are dropping south and east, showing you that the cold air mass is taking over and following this low pressure system. And as this trough intensifies on Monday, what will happen is the southern low takes over. It starts deepening over the Gulf Stream here of this mid-Atlantic, and then we'll come right up the coast here. And according to the European, this is Monday night, moisture does catch up, or the cold does catch up to the moisture, and we see a change to snow around New York City, New Jersey, maybe even Philadelphia, and that's going to be Monday night. The bigger storm is going to be more across the interior of western and central New England and maybe southern Maine, and we're probably going to see a change over to rain over southeastern Mass and the Maine seacoast because that low is actually coming in and drawing in some milder air right along the coast. But for a change, we see a better chance potentially of some significant snow on the backside of this, and that does include New York City and maybe Allentown and Scranton, Wilkes-Barre and Binghamton. So places down in here that maybe haven't seen any real snow actually do stand a chance at seeing some snow. And the other models are starting to kind of come into line with the European, but there are still differences. It's still about 4 to 5 days off into the future. So I do expect to see some waffling in the models to continue. That is nothing new to anybody in the weather world. Next week, behind this cold, we do see a warm up around the west and especially in the Rockies and Southern Plains. Another big storm heads into the west. So here's more heavy rain, which we don't need to see across the west coast here Monday night and Tuesday. And that follows with some reprieve in that weather. But this is our next storm that we're going to have to keep an eye on in the eastern U.S. by next weekend. The GFS I'll show you is not too far off of what the European shows. Big snow up in here, storm leaving tomorrow off of the northeast coast. And we see maybe what could be on the GFS, even some wet snow on the front side here in places like Danville, Virginia, and maybe even over to Roxborough, North Carolina on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. This could end up being too cold and too overdone, but we could see some frozen here along the foothills from about Boone and Wilkesboro on northward up into West Virginia. But our storm takes over off the Outer Banks here Monday morning, and it will come up the coast. And this is a slightly weaker solution than the European and farther back to the west. And the upper trough is a little slower to kick in and push the cold in with the moisture. So the GFS says New York City is not really going to see much of anything, but farther up, north of 84 is where the snow is going to happen. And then we see a wraparound snowfall across Mass. But the European is what you want to see for snow in the Northeast. The GFS is showing the storm coming inland, but it is not as intense. So we are still going to be playing that game, it looks like, for a few more days. Middle of next week, some rain coming to Florida, it looks like. Another storm drops southward through the central U.S., another wave of cold coming. And we do see a chance for another storm on the East Coast here, but the models are not showing us a lot of agreement. Still kind of crazy, though, to see on the St. Patrick's Day and then that following weekend a possibility of wet snow even into the Carolinas for Saturday morning, the 18th. But this is not set in stone at this point. Just know that the main takeaway is that the pattern remains pretty active. The threat for severe weather, because it's getting colder, is not nearly as high as what we saw back in February and early March. And more storms on the East Coast and the Southeast with more cold air in place could mean more forecast variability. And the West is going to remain active as well, unfortunately. All right, so the European total snowfall, we see a huge area just encompassing the West, the northern U.S., and all the way into the Northeast, right on through the end of next week. And it's going to pile up across Canada for sure, Atlantic Canada as well. Really, the big winners are going to be Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, and the interior of the Northeast, and even the mountains here, the Smokies, could see significant snow. The Euro's showing possibly 2 to 3 feet in the West Virginia mountains around Snowshoe. So that's just the European for the next 10. If you zoom into the upper Midwest, you see our big storm here with over a foot expected in parts of Minnesota, North Dakota, and Montana. And this will be a big doozy of a storm here right on through next week, a second storm to follow as well. In the upper Midwest, this is the storm that's leaving us now with a few more inches here today. And then the next storm farther south, close to I-70. Excuse me. But you can see there'll be significant totals all the way down to Des Moines, Chicago, Detroit, where there'll be a few more inches of snow. Farther south to the Ohio River, the amounts are pretty minimal, but Ohio may get in on the action here by next weekend with the potential for 3 to 6 inches around Columbus, an inch or two in Dayton, maybe even small amounts around Indianapolis and Cincinnati. But again, if you're in this area, you have very much the right to feel like you've been kind of screwed when it comes to snow this winter. And I'm with you on that. Trust me. I'm in Raleigh. We've seen 10 minutes of flakes all winter. That's it. I've never seen it so piddly in my lifetime. In the Northeast, here's our storm today and tonight. And most of the snow kind of ends when it gets to the Tappan Zee Bridge and Western Connecticut and those areas. The next storm, though, on the GFS, or this is the European, does go to town with maybe 3 to 6 inches for the 5 boroughs, Long Island, Southern Connecticut, maybe over a foot when you get up into parts of Bergen County and farther north and west towards Morristown, New Jersey, and also up, of course, into the higher elevations of Pennsylvania and New York, where we do see potential over the next 10 days for amounts exceeding 24 inches. The snow belt here could get clobbered as that cold continues to pour across from Canada. We're seeing potentially 50 inches of snow in Cattaraugus and Chautauqua counties here in New York, and also parts of Erie County. So the snow belts are going to get rocking and rolling here, it looks like, but the mid-Atlantic is not, with just very small amounts likely on the Delmarva across the I-95 corridor, basically south of around Piscataway, New Jersey. So I'm trying to name some towns here. GFS, this is farther off into the future. You can see, again, not a great forecast in the mid-Atlantic region. You got to get kind of north of I-78 to really see much of anything. Central PA, potentially over a foot. We're looking again at high amounts over West Virginia, right on up to about Johnstown, Somerset County. But the big snow totals are likely going to be across interior New York State, central and parts of southern New England. And as we get up into Canada, I had Canada loaded. I don't know what happened here. I'll find you. There we go. We got to switch to centimeters for you folks, but we definitely see across Ontario some big numbers showing up, over 60 centimeters, maybe up to 80 centimeters in Ontario. Atlantic Canada, the potential to see 30 to 50 centimeters over New Brunswick. Also heavy amounts over the Cape Sable area here and across Newfoundland, 20 to 30 centimeters. So not bad, but not going to be a big snowfall. And you can see there's a snow hole in Canada too. It's cloudy, but it's not really snowing on the St. Lawrence. So if you're in Ohio or Indiana and or in Philadelphia and you think you're the only ones, trust me, you're not. Even parts of Canada are not benefiting from the weather that we've been looking at. The ensembles for the Philadelphia airport show very small amounts here right on through Tuesday. And then some of the ensembles show some backside snow Tuesday into Wednesday with as much as maybe 3 to 6 inches possible. But on average, the models are showing an inch or less. It gets better though around New York City. We could see around an inch, give or take, here from this first storm. The one next week on Tuesday and Wednesday has a bigger spread, as you would imagine, but several ensemble members do have us getting more than 4 inches of snow, mainly Tuesday into Wednesday, maybe another storm heading into the 22nd, 23rd time frame. But the average is still not significant. It's only a couple of inches. And then Boston, those amounts go up here. And a lot of this is not going to be this first storm, but the one next week, where we do have some ensemble members showing potentially 1 to 2 feet of snow, the average about 7 inches, but still there are several members that have that low far enough inland where Boston even misses out on any kind of significant snow. We're just talking about primarily rain. All right, so let's move along here. Wind gusts in the Northeast on the European. It's going to be windy here behind our storm tomorrow, 20 to 30 mile per hour gusts, even 40 in northwestern Virginia. And then as we get into next week, as our next storm comes up, we see winds really ramping up over the Great Lakes, over the mountains, and primarily across Long Island and New England. We see wind gusts that may exceed 60 to 70 miles per hour around Marblehead and Gloucester parts of Massachusetts, 50 around southern parts of the Maine seacoast, 50 to 60 miles per hour over Nantucket. So a big coastal flood, a big wind event coming from this nor'easter, according to the European, with wind gusts for many over 50 miles per hour. And it's going to stay windy right on into Thursday before things start quieting down. So you definitely have some wind to come with the cold here, rough surf as well. And here's the temperatures next week. We see teens and 20s at night, Sunday into Monday. So it's definitely a colder air mass, and we really don't warm up until the very end of next week, where we're back into the 40s and 50s. And that'll be short-lived before the next front moves through here. You can see it on Sunday morning, the 19th. A big drop where we're in the 50s in New Jersey and back into the teens and 20s in western PA. This is subject to change due to timing differences, but it is coming once again. Where we'll definitely see the cold with respect to average is going to be across the midsection of the east here. Early next week, we see 20s and 30s dropping down Monday into Tuesday, and certainly going to be cold at night here Wednesday morning. We're looking at sub-freezing temperatures into the Carolinas, Georgia, and Alabama in teens and 20s across the mountains, teens around the Great Lakes. It seems like the lakes warm you up on the lakeshore, but the wind, of course, counters that with the cold feel. And then we start to warm up here Thursday and Friday. Actually, we'll go in Chicago from the teens and 20s back into the 50s and 60s around St. Louis. But that that warmth is short-lived. Friday, it's moving east, and Saturday into Sunday, it's turning quite a bit colder once again. And down south, we see warm temperatures continuing on the Gulf Coast. Here's our boundary stalled right north of I-10, right on through this afternoon, and then cooler tonight, and then warming up some for tomorrow. Here's our big front dropping southeast, and it turns cooler on Monday, 50s and low 60s for the Gulf Coast region, except Florida. We're not going to get that cold in Florida. Tuesday, it gets a little cooler, but really the cold comes down Tuesday night and Wednesday. And we're looking at 30s and 40s for lows in Florida, 40s and 50s across the western Gulf states, and another cold night expected for Thursday night as well, as you can see right here, before we warm back up towards the end of next week. Out west, we have a major rain event coming, and the drought is certainly coming to an end. Now we're worried about significant amounts of flooding with a high risk, which is very rare to see from the Weather Prediction Center, of excessive rainfall. And this is basically Monterey Bay right on down to Point Conception, favoring the Big Sur area. We're going to see not only a lot of rain, but also mudslides and washed out roadways in here. Excessive rain as well, and a lot of this is going to be mountain snow. East of the valley, when you get to the foothills, we do have the potential for a major flood to happen today and tonight. The excessive amounts do let up some tomorrow in this region. We still have a chance for heavy rain in northern Cal and the Bay Area. And then we get a little break by Saturday into Sunday with the higher amounts of rain expected here over northern Cal and southwestern Oregon. You can see rain totals here from the blend of models over the next week or so are generally 3 to 5 inches in northern Cal. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more over the passes. Most of this is snow, but 15 inches of liquid is going to cause major problems. And in southern Cal, I thought I had the map up for southern Cal. I'm not sure what happened here. Oh yeah, here we go. We see just tremendous amounts of rain today around Santa Cruz and Big Sur, 3 to 4 inches of rain, and it just piles up tonight. And right on into next week, we see potentially amounts of 15, 16 inches on the coastal range just east of Big Sur. So this is going to cause potentially catastrophic amounts of flooding here. I'm very concerned about you in Central California here over the next week or so. Obviously less on I-5 down to the Grapevine, but even a couple of inches possible around the northern parts and eastern parts of LA, maybe as much as 5 to 6 inches here across the San Gabriel mountain range as well. In the east, we are seeing significant rain, but nothing like what California is getting, but potentially 1 to 2 inches in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. Lesser amounts up to the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic, and higher amounts once again up around New York City. A couple of inches will be possible. And here's Freddie. It is now a severe tropical storm about to become, I mean, they don't have hurricanes in the southern hemisphere, but it would be a hurricane, making landfall as a Category 2 here Saturday morning, so in about 24 hours, right on the Madagascar coast. But modeling showing it after making landfall here, sitting around the coast on the GFS, weakening, raining itself out, and then re-emerging over the southern Madagascar channel, moving down the coast of South Africa. It'll be dry on South Africa, but once again over the water as an extratropical storm. And Freddie will have been over the water here for 45 to 50 days. Pretty crazy. All right. So I went a little long today, but there really is a ton to talk about. The West getting battered, the Northeast seeing potentially a major nor'easter early next week, the cold coming down, severe weather, and an unusual tropical storm in the southern hemisphere. Just your average day in Josh's severe weather. Hey, thanks guys for your time. I really do appreciate it. Please like this video, subscribe, share with your friends. And I want to give all the glory to God who allows, whoa, what's going on here? Allows me to do what I can every day, and that is to share weather with folks, but also to express how important to me my faith is. And I just want to read a quick verse to you, and that is Psalm 131, a song for pilgrims ascending to Jerusalem, a psalm of David. Lord, my heart is not proud, my eyes are not haughty. I don't concern myself with matters too great or too awesome for me to grasp. Instead, I have calmed and quieted myself, like a weaned child who no longer cries for its mother's milk. Yes, like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord now and always. And you know, from this time on and forevermore, just remember that each day is a new gift filled with God's love. Make the most of it and do so for God. I believe this is my gift to you all from God. That's to share the weather with you as a degreed meteorologist, as somebody who cares about folks. But honestly, nobody really cares about what you know until they know how much you care. And I really do care for you all. I don't spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day on YouTube just for my own good. I know there's folks who do that. They're there to make some money. They're there to just, share about the weather. But honestly, this is not to deceive folks to say, oh, you've got to watch my weather to hear about my faith. But really, this is why I do what I do every day. And that is every day is a gift from God. I want to share my love to you, pray for you, and I appreciate it if you pray for me. So if you have any prayer requests, I am very happy to pray for you. Just doing what God has called me to do, and that is to spread the good news, to share that the Lord our God is with us. He created us. He sent his son to die for us on the cross so that we could live eternally, and so that we don't suffer in life, but to understand that while we are going to be going through trials and tribulations, dealing with difficult weather, dealing with chroma key issues apparently, that we're still to serve in joy, and we're still to rejoice in the Lord every day. So I'm happy to do that. Love to pray for you, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll talk again in the morning. God bless you. See you then.